It is March 8th, 2020, a Sunday here in G Vegas, little town outside of Boston. This is episode 53 of Funny Like Clown Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. As always, Funny Like Clown Podcast is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. For the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time, go to www.gvegas.webs.com. Get the stuff delivered right to your doorstep, pops in your mouth. Nothing like a homemade recipe buffalo sauce, and I'm a big buffalo sauce guy, so I like it. All right, we're not talking buffalo sauce anymore. We're talking comedians, comedy, power guy in the business, Howard Stern, with a legendary controversial career, I guess we could call it. To discuss him, I have comedian out of Leominster, Mass., a little town outside of Gardner, which are both outside of Boston, Keith Gleason. Keith, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dennis. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thank you very much for calling in and being on. And you chose a very interesting guy to discuss. What made you choose Howard Stern?
I know Howard's not considered like a quote-unquote comedian, but as far as like the comedy business goes, I think Howard's like one of the funniest, entertainers out there.
It's a comedy-based show that he does, right? Yeah, it's humorous.
Yeah, a comedy-based show, and and an innovator, I think, in a lot of ways too.
Oh yeah, they say what? Elvis changed music, Richard Pryor changed comedy, and Howard Stern changed radio, right?
Yeah, I agree, and I've been a fan for so long, since like the '90s, and I just think he's had such a forward-going career. Like I think he's still great to this day.
Yeah.
I think like his best years though were like about maybe like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I still think he's like a strong interviewer and still very funny.
Yeah. What comedian wouldn't want to be on the Howard Stern show? I mean, everybody'd like to get on there.
Yeah, and well, that's another thing too. Is like he's really good with comedians. He's very, very a lot of ways helped their careers and done some really in-depth like interviews with like.
Yeah, everybody looks at his antics and says he's a nut, but if you get past his antics, he is a very good interviewer.
Yeah, and if you ever, I think it's on YouTube, but if you ever listen to the interview he did with Jerry Seinfeld, they just talk about a lot of actually doing stand-up and like what his process is and how to craft a joke and just things like that, stuff that I think every comedian would love to hear that conversation.
He gets the information out of you that you want to hear. Yeah, he's got a way of talking to you.
So I also think he's getting back to like the pioneer stuff. Like no one was doing radio like he was, and I think that's why he's like very considered controversial,
Yeah, he was considered, they called it a shock jock. He was the very first shock jock where, there were other people who did radio that would leave you stunned, but they wouldn't shock you. This guy shocked you like, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this.
Yeah.
Well, there were other, dirty comedians that did radio, where there's a line between dirty and just being shocked,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like a lot of those, and I think a lot of like the controversial comedians were like attracted to him, like Kinison and Dice and guys.
Oh yeah, because you can't put those guys anywhere.
Yeah. Towards them.
He was a mecca where you could put those guys, where they couldn't do their thing on late night TV. The FCC wouldn't allow it. So you had Howard on, that'd give you exposure to do what you actually do.
Yeah, definitely.
But in his entire
career, the reason he moved to satellite so he could get away from the FCC.
Yeah, right. In his entire career, do you have a favorite memory of him? If you had to choose one high spot, what would be your high spot for him?
Well, for me personally, when he became a judge on America's Got Talent,
right?
I was like, well, this is my only chance that I'll probably ever see Howard Stern live somewhere because he's such a infamous recluse,
Yeah, right.
So when I found out he was doing America's Got Talent, the first year I got tickets to the New York.
Really?
Yeah.
How did that turn out for you?
Oh, great, actually.
It was a good
time. We went down there and we got in line. We were pretty early, so we were within the first 100 people in line. And because it was the first year Howard was doing it, they took like the first couple of hundred people, and they brought us in for like a red carpet event.
Oh, wow.
And so yeah, it was really cool.
You
so
lucked
all
out.
the judges kind of came out, and I pushed myself to like the front of the line, and as Howard came by, I was like, Howard, and like he turned over and we fist bumped for a second, which was great.
There's a moment you remember. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't really talk to him because he was kind of being ushered along.
Well, that's kind of like the Comic-Cons, you know. You go get a picture with him, you get a brief moment, but you don't get a long conversation or nothing.
Right, that was exactly it. And
right.
then, you know, it was also kind of cool to see Howie Mandel and, like, Sharon Osbourne was there and, you know, just all the other judges.
Right.
But, and then, like, the other really fun thing about going down to that appearance was a lot of his whack packers were there.
Oh, okay.
So we got to see, like, Jeff the Drunk and, you know...
all the people from the show, right.
All those guys.
His posse, right? Yeah,
his posse. They were all
you had to tune in, you know?
Which was kind of fun, you know?
I'm not even a regular watching that show. I mean, I did one season, but not that. But I had to tune in the first episode. Howard was a judge because you say, well, how is this going to turn out? I have to. What is this guy going to do? But that's what made his career, I guess.
Good at it. Like it was, you know, shocking. Like,
yeah.
The funny thing is like on the taping, you don't get to see like they only show you brief parts of it on TV, but like a lot of the stuff that they don't show gets cut, and a lot of it, that's the best stuff, you know?
Well, I remember on the season that he, you know, each judge could choose one person they wanted to bring back, and Howard brought back some guy. You could hit him in the nuts as hard as you wanted, and it wouldn't hurt him, and Howard brought him back, and Howie Mandel was giving him such shit about it. You know, you rob like a comedian or a musician of a chance to bring this guy back, and Howard's like, I like the guy. I think it's funny. You know?
Yeah, it was a unique act, if anything, you know?
Yeah, I mean, not everybody's doing it, you know? There's plenty of singers, plenty of comedians. So.
I don't know if that guy's done anything with his career since then.
Yeah, I don't know. That might have been the high point of it right there, but if you're a one-hit wonder, it's better than a no-hit wonder, I guess. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's get into it here. From 1986 to 2005, he was on terrestrial radio. That's radio you can tune in over the airways. From 2006 till present, he moved over to Sirius XM satellite radio. I didn't know this one about him. Did you know his actual first job in radio was at Boston University? Did you know that?
I did know that, yeah. When he went to satellite, there was like this huge special. It was kind of like a documentary. It was just about Howard Stern's history.
Okay.
And it started with his days at Boston University. They actually had some recordings from those old radio shows. It was kind of interesting to hear, you know?
A young and raw Howard, right?
Yeah, basically, really raw.
So from there he went on to do other, I mean, this was before he was popular. He did WRNW in New York, WCCC in Connecticut, WWWW, that's a lot of W's, in Detroit, and WWDC in Washington, D.C., and I guess in Washington's where he first started to make a real mainstream name for himself, isn't it?
Yes. That's how he got the attention of, like, WNBC after that.
Yeah, because I think he went to number 2 in, like, no time in there, and they was stealing most of the audience, and then that's what WNBC, as you just said, they took notice, and he worked there from 82 to 85 until he was fired.
Yeah.
But after he got fired, he did a 20-year run at WXRX in New York, and I guess that's where he was most remembered for doing the morning show, which... That's the primetime spot on morning radio because that's the drive time when everybody's going to work. That's when you get the most listeners. So if you're going to be on radio, that's when you want to be on. But, I mean, what do you remember most about that show?
Syndicated, too, and that's when he came up to here on, what is it, FXN? FNX, they used to have him in Boston,
I thought it was BCN. No, I don't know.
BCN,
yeah,
WBCN,
right. Yeah, right? In 1986, he went to syndication. He aired in 60 different markets. And, I mean... You're hearing 60 different markets. You're hitting most of the United States. That's incredible right there.
Yeah, definitely.
But, you know, I tag into, like, the Joe Rogan podcast right now. You know, Joe said he started out small and he started saying to himself, I wonder if I can get this guy. I wonder if I can get this guy. Once you get enough guests, I mean, I did a local show, The Comedy Kitchen, you know, and I was getting on local guests, and all of a sudden I got Steve Sweeney on, and when I asked another big star, you want to come in? No, not really. I'm like, well, Steve Sweeney did it. Oh, Steve did it? Sure, I'll be down if Steve did it. You know, I mean, that's what gave me the break. So, I mean, he got his big break, I guess, at WNBC. Once, I mean, you see the big letters NBC, there, you don't get much bigger than that. Who don't want to be on that, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
He was the first DJ ever to be #1 in both New York and LA at the same time. Did you know that about him?
I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean that's a heck of a one to have on your resume right there to be the first. Oh, he was the first DJ to do a lot of things. I mean, but not everything. He is to this day the most fined DJ in FCC history, equaling $2.5 million to the station in New York. Which, I mean, you say that figure, $2.5 million, and it's almost a crazy amount to think of, but these people in New York City, I mean, they got so much money, that's like $5 to me and you, so, I mean,
yeah, right.
$2.5 million really ain't that much, I mean.
Yep.
I remember when the Patriots lost to the New York Giants in the Super Bowl. Some guy in New York, he sent a big truck up here, and in the middle of Copley Square, he dumped a big truckload of Butterfingers, because Wes Welker, they called him Butterfingers for dropping the pass that would have won the game for him.
Yep.
And it's like it showed you how much money these guys have. You enough money to pay for a truckload of Butterfingers, pay for the truck. They fined the guy, like, I forget, he had enough money, but to him it was a big joke. Yeah, take all the money you want. It was funny to me, so, I mean, $2.5 million ain't really that much to these guys down there if you think about it, but,
yeah, no, I agree.
But then Howard Stern, a 5-year deal worth $500 million, which was one of the top in radio at the time for WNBC. Here's what I didn't know. Did you know? Everybody's got a hobby. We all do our main thing. His hobby's photography, and some of his photos have been put in World Magazine and Hamptons Magazine. Did you know he was into photography too, or?
Yeah, I know that just because I'm still an active listener.
Okay.
He's actually moved on to painting now.
Really? So did you see any of his photos? Have you seen any, or?
No. Well, I did see a couple of. He did a calendar.
Okay.
Was
it good work, or?
It was no. It was a calendar for the dog charity that he's part of, and I think my wife got it for me one year, so I got to see all those photos he took for that. But as far as anything else, I don't think I've seen any of the pictures he took for those magazines.
I think it's more of a hobby, and it's not a mainstream thing, so not much of us have seen the work. But I mean, it's good to have something to get away from the main thing you do.
Yeah, I think he said that he likes to keep it all private, mostly.
Yeah, it's for him more than it is the public.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So let's see. As we mentioned, 2012 to 2015, he was a judge on America's Got Talent. Do you know what made him stop doing that? Do you know why he finally left the show, or?
I know, he hated the schedule. He
it's
talked about
tough,
it a lot on the show. Because
you can only do so much.
Because he was still doing his radio at the
same
time.
Right.
And I think because, he's one of the... Because he's an older guy now, and he just is I don't even need this, I don't even need the headache,
Right.
So I think that, and then did you hear the whole thing, when they had the Sony hacks, that Simon Cowell was actively trying to get him fired so he could take over on America's Got Talent and all that.
I didn't hear that. Well, he's on there now, so it worked, I guess, if that was his plan.
I was why did he even do? He just asked. All he had to do was ask me, and he could have had the job,
Yeah. Well, what I did hear, I heard Jay Leno referred to him on the Tonight Show as irrelevant. He's pretty much irrelevant anymore, and Howard said, I'm hitting just as many on satellite radio people as Jay's hitting, so how can he call me irrelevant? But I thought, getting back on network TV, that was getting back to the mainstream, where everybody can't afford satellite radio, but everybody can turn on, the TV,
Oh, yeah. Well, him and Leno had a little bit of a feud, right? Did you know about that?
I know that. Do you know what caused it? I didn't. I know they didn't like each other, but I mean...
It was all over Stuttering John, because I guess Leno went behind Howard's back and offered him the job as the announcer.
Oh, right. I do remember that, right, yeah. And Howard said he should have checked with me first. Right. Well, that didn't turn out too good for Jay, because that didn't work out, John being on the show the whole thing there, so...
Yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, yeah, to this day, I don't think John and Howard get along too well.
No, I don't think so. They don't. At least he never talks about him, so I don't think...
Well, most people that left the show, I know him and Jackie had a feud for a while, but he's been a guest on since then, and Artie Lang, to this day, he hasn't been back on the show, but he had all the drug issues.
Him and Artie, I think that was more on Artie's side with his addiction and all that crap, But it sucks because I think Artie was a great addition to the show.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite stand-up comics. I think he's very truthful. He talks about the personal stuff in his life, and it makes you. It's very interesting. Jeez. One of my favorite routines Artie had, he talked about going to rehab. Some guy named Juan, like, counselor's like, Juan, stand up and tell us what bring you here. I kidnapped my best friend's baby and I sold him for angel dust. How many comics would talk about something like that, you know? It's like, you did what? Well, that's what made the show #1. You can't believe they're talking about it. Let's see, he put out 2 books. He put out Private Parts and Miss America, and then in 2019 he came out with another one, Howard Stern Comes Again. Have you read any of his books or no?
I have the first 2. I have Private Parts and Miss America. Okay. I haven't gotten Comes Again yet, and the only reason I haven't is because I'd say 80% of that book is just transcripts of his interviews, which I've kind of already heard.
Right. Ron White did that too. Most of his book was just them typing out his jokes. It's like, well, I've already heard his jokes. I don't need to see him in type.
Yeah, right. It's like, why do I need to buy the book? I guess the reason to buy it is he does commentary on it, but it's like, I'll wait till I can get it at a discount, I guess, you know?
So, now I did see this and did enjoy it. From the book Private Parts, he actually made it into a film, Private Parts, the movie. Did you see the movie?
Yeah, I love the movie.
I love the movie, too. I thought it was extremely funny. And I didn't even think he did a good job, but the guy who played the pig vomit guy there, I thought he made the movie, you know, but Howard was smart enough to say, hey, I'm not an actor. I need a veteran actor to carry this film, and he carried it, I thought, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I like that movie, too, because you get to see, you know, how he became who he is.
Yeah, his rise to fame, right?
Great, you know?
How it all happened, yeah. Let's see. Now I found this one interesting. He's wanted to be on radio since he was 5 years old. And he said when he was a kid, he actually went in his basement to his dad's record player, and he'd actually record himself doing a radio show. He'd create characters, and he'd do like pre-recorded prank phone calls that he did while he was playing on his dad's record player some of the music, and he recorded all that stuff. And that's like, I remember the Beatles had like an old box of like demo tapes that got lost in a yard sale, and they said if they could ever find that box, it'd be worth millions. I mean, could you imagine Howard as a kid doing fake radio shows, how much that would go for at auction if he could find those tapes?
Oh my God, he's freaking great.
That'd be like, yeah, something to just hear him at 5 years old doing in his dad's basement a fake radio show. But I remember,
awesome,
remember the show WKRP when that came out? It's like every kid wanted to be a DJ when they watched that show, you know? It was like, who wasn't playing DJ as a kid, so he was doing the same as everybody else, I guess. But to actually record it would have been, interesting to listen to years later.
Did you know he hated that show? Because he,
really?
This just came up recently because they were talking about theme songs from TV shows, and that one came up, and he said that he hated that show because it didn't show radio accurately. He said it like because radio is such a horrible business.
Yeah.
And he said like the show just made it look like it was this like fun time, you know.
And $200 to do 60 hours of radio or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like. But let's see. He got a $35,000 advance to do an album, comedy parodies. 50 Ways to Rank Your Mother. It was re-released in 1982. It's called Unclean Beaver. Do you remember listening to that, or?
No, that was before I became a listener. So I bet you could find those on eBay. I should probably try to get
I had it. I mean, I did listen. I don't even remember what was on it. I had it on cassette tape. That's how long ago that was. But
oh my God.
I did listen to it. I remember it was funny, but I couldn't tell you what it was. It wasn't nothing I remember, but at the time it was definitely funny. Here's one. I always thought it was cool. I mean, he always brought his friends along with him, like people like Fred Norris he met early on in radio, Robin Quivers he met, early on in radio. But he created a team. Wherever he went to his next job, he'd always bring the team with him. I mean, do you think that's part of what made him great?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's part of why his show works is like all the different personalities he brings into it, you know?
Right.
It's not just him, it's all these characters, these created
I thought it was
by
cool.
working with people, you know.
I always said if I ever made it big, I'd never forget where I came from because I love the people who don't forget where they came from, and these other people, they look down on you once they hit the big time. I never thought that was cool if you look down on somebody,
Yeah.
Let's say.
I think he's like that, where he's very appreciative of his past.
Yeah, he remembered the people that got him there, so that was cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So WNBC tried, when he was on there, that's what everybody remembers, they tried to control Stern for a while by giving him rules that he couldn't have no sexual or religious topics. That worked somewhat, but not so well. They hired an attorney to do a 7-second delay, where if he said anything the attorney thought was inappropriate, he could delete it out, which caused great controversy. And they nicknamed him Pig Vomit. And I guess, he was, I forget what it was, he was battling cancer or something, and Howard would openly say on the air, I hope this guy dies of cancer or something. So, do you think some subjects are off limits, or do you think, hey, that's the route he chose, it's radio, anything goes? What's your opinion?
I don't believe in censorship at all, so It's like, I think he has a right to say whatever he wants, no matter how offended people get, especially today,
Yeah, he's the one who has to pay the price. If people are offended, nobody else. You can say whatever you want. He's going to feel the heat, nobody else.
He has the right to say it, if he wants to go that route,
Right. So, do you remember he had a long-going feud in radio with Don Imus? Do you remember any of that feud?
Yeah.
What was that all about? Well, what created the feud? Do you know? What do you know about the feud?
I know a lot of it stemmed from the WNBC days.
Okay.
Because when Howard got to WNBC, Don Imus was the #1 DJ there.
Right.
And he felt threatened by Howard. So.
Oh, really? I thought it was because he looked down on Howard. Like, yeah, you're the new guy, get out of my face, I'm hot stuff, but...
That's
so
what
he found threatened,
say, but, Howard was saying that eventually, when he started, getting better ratings than Don Imus, Imus would actually come to the show and try to take notes and,
try to be his buddy now, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what was going on.
I recently had that happen in comedy, people who used to attack me, now Dennis is doing big things in comedy. Hey, buddy, what's up? Oh, we buddy now,
right, exactly. As soon as you, turn that corner,
everybody wants
again,
to... But,
they
say...
fickle people are,
he was offered jobs out in L.A. to do, big money to go out to L.A., but he said he decided to stay in New York because he wanted to beat Don Imus in the ratings. That was one of the reasons he chose to stay in New York. So that guy must have been really under his skin. To really turn down that much money. Now I'm staying here to beat this guy.
He still talks about him,
Right. So he was already #1 on radio. That opened up. He was on the David Letterman show and People magazine, and that just fueled his popularity even more, to make it more worldwide as opposed to, just radio.
Yeah.
That was up until the point, where they fired him. He did some specials, which I do remember a few of these. The Underpants Party, U.S. Open Source, Crucified by the FCC, the Butt Bongo Fiesta, the New York Rotten Eve. Do you remember any of those specials?
I do, yeah.
But what do you remember about them?
I saw a good chunk of them. They're a little dated now.
Right.
But I bought bootleg years ago of all the Howard Stern Channel 9 stuff that he did.
Yeah, back when you could buy that stuff on eBay when it was a fun site. You can't get it anymore.
Yeah,
but
you can't get it anymore.
I bought them also.
You don't really see bootleggers anymore.
That was the next. Yeah, he did 69 episodes of a TV show. That was where I remember Stuttering John from. Was all the crazy interviews that he did on there. But and they said that actually shows some nights it crossed over into Saturday Night Live, and some nights he'd actually beat Saturday Night Live in the ratings. But
yeah, isn't that crazy?
If you look at it now, it was so poorly produced. You can see microphones hanging and camera angles ain't right. It was such. At the time you were cracking up, but back at it, it was such poorly done TV. But what do you remember most about the show?
I remember a lot of the episodes. They did it just extensions of the radio show.
Yeah.
And I think towards the end it got a little more crazier with sets and stuff. But I remember liking it. Some of it's cringy now, but a lot of it you can still see the genius there,
Yeah, for the time. I said that, when I walked in to do the Comedy Kitchen, the local TV show I did, the first few episodes, if you watch them, you can tell we had no idea what we were doing, 50 episodes later, I was putting out a professional product. But I mean, you need stuff like that before you can get to the next level. And I think that was his stepping stone to the next level, was making the mistakes he made on that show, you know?
Oh yeah, I agree. And it's like you gotta crawl to learn how to walk.
Exactly right. Let's see. He labeled himself as the king of all media. They said that was a jab at Michael Jackson for naming himself the king of pop, but
yep.
it'd be hard to argue. I mean, if you asked, who's the number one interviewers out there right now, Howard's going to be in the conversation, don't he?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean,
he's got to. If he's not your number one, he's going to be in your top three. I think.
Yeah, he's in the top 5 anyway, definitely, maybe top 3, and for a lot of people, he's number 1. I mean, I'm fine that, I do this podcast, I love it, but what I strive to be is Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan's got the greatest podcast out there right now, and
I like Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yeah, they say, who would you want to see? You'd rather see Joe Rogan do the presidential, monitor the presidential debate, but it'll never happen, but that's what everybody'd love to see, That's the president.
God, wouldn't that be awesome?
Oh, yeah, get Howard in there, too. Even, can you imagine that? That'd be too off the wall,
they
though,
would control both of them, I think.
Yeah, So let's go back to this one. Here's one I remember very well. He was on the E! Channel, where they did a simulcast of his radio show for a while. What do you remember about the E! Channel?
Oh, I love those shows. I used to watch that religiously. I missed the first couple of years because I didn't have cable at the time, but once I had it, I was devouring that show like every day,
It gives you a different view, though, because it's like, on radio you can listen to it, but when you see somebody and see like their facial reactions and their motions, it gives you a whole new, look at how they're talking about something,
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And then, like, you'd hear something on the show,
right?
And you're like, oh, I can't wait to see how this looks visually, when you got home at night,
Right. Let's see, in 1992, he did the MTV Music Awards and came out with the character Fart Man. What do you remember about that?
Oh, yeah. I've seen footage of that.
And he caught a lot of controversy for that, too.
Oh, he did. Yeah, he actually was making... I don't know what happened to it, but he had started production on making a movie of that.
There was a comic book, yeah, they ran in a newspaper or something. He did something with the character where they were running those things, but they said at MTV he was scheduled to give an award with somebody, and nobody wanted to go up and give away an award with Fart Man. They didn't want to be seen with that character. I forget who it was. There was only one guy. He finally agreed to do it, but...
Yeah, that's exactly it.
He caught quite a bit of heat for that.
One of the most... because he came from the ceiling on wires and all that crap.
Yeah, but he probably got more publicity by being an idiot like that. Because I remember Dice. Nobody knew Dice until he went off on MTV, and it blew up the next day. That's what turned him into a star. Everybody heard, whoa, he did what? He did what? I think that was the move that he tried to make.
It's true. It's like you make a statement like that and people remember you,
Right. So let's see. This one I will never forgive the man for personally, but in 1994 he started a film company and he bought the rights to the Sam Kinison book, Brother Sam, and he was going to make a movie about Sam Kinison. He bought a 10-year window from his brother Bill, and Howard with America's Got Talent, his radio show, he never got around to making the movie, and it's this many years later, and it'll probably never get made at this point. But I
didn't know about that.
Yeah, well, Howard was the shock jock radio jock, and Sam was the shock comedian, so they were like friends, Sam would show up to Howard's stuff, and Howard would show up to Sam's stuff, because they were both into the shock thing, in their own fields, but, had you made the movie about Sam back in the 80s, it would have been at the movie theater, you've seen it, so Howard didn't make it for 10 years, it went back to, Bill, and Bill put it on HBO's desk because, it's probably better suited for HBO now than it is the box office, obviously, but they did the film about...
someone will make that someday,
Well, they made the film about Andy Kaufman there where Jim Carrey played him, and that didn't do good, so that kind of... They lost money on that movie, so they didn't want to do another movie about a dead comedian. They said there's not an audience out there for it, so that's why nobody's made the movie.
Okay.
I did a short film about him for YouTube. It wasn't nothing big budget, but I did From Preacher to Prophet, a Sam Kinison story. It's about a 14-minute film.
I'll have to check that out.
All right, yeah, it's on YouTube, so look it up. So I got something small done. I'll never do nothing what Howard could have did, but something's better than nothing, I said. It was a fan film, so I did it. Let's see. He ran for governor of New York. Did you know that?
I did know that, yeah.
And he had what? I forget. His platform was to bring the death penalty back.
He wanted to do construction at night.
Yeah, it was no more daytime construction, only during the nighttime
and
hours.
I forget what the third thing
there was. One other
running
thing.
On the,
some crazy topics he was running on.
The Libertine ticket, I think, or
and I guess he was serious about it. And he might have won with as many fans as he got, just as a joke. He might have actually won the thing, but
yeah, he could have. I think the thing that stopped him was he didn't want to give
his address and his income. That's what they said. In order to run for mayor, you got to give your home address and you have to put how much income he made. He said it's nobody's business how much income I have, so that's why he finally pulled out of the race. But it would have been funny just to see if he could have won, but.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, just as a joke, I know Pauly Shore, the old comedian, he ran for president. Ron White, the comedian, he ran for president. I mean, not that they had a chance of winning, but as a joke, just to say you ran for president, I know they've done it, you know?
Yeah, it's hilarious.
So,
got him a lot of attention, too, you know?
Yeah. Well, here's the big one that I guess, I mean, how you look at it either brought him down or it launched him to bigger things, but when Janet Jackson did the halftime show and she had the nip slip there,
oh, yep.
the next day, they made a major crackdown on FCC rules, and that's what finally forced them, you know. They were cracking down as hard as they ever have. He had to move over to Sirius satellite radio, pay radio now, because they did the major crackdown because of what happened there. But now you said you still listen to this day, so you must have Sirius XM satellite radio, right?
I do, yeah.
What do you pay for a month to listen to that?
Well, what I actually made a good deal with it back in the day when it first started, when Howard first went over there.
Yeah.
They were offering subscriptions for lifetime subscriptions for $500, and at the time it was like, well, Howard only signed for 5 years, like,
is it worth it or not? Do I take the chance?
I took the chance. I paid $500, and I've had it free since like 2000. Like
that was a lot of money back then because they were unknown when he first went over. That was a big chance he took.
Yeah, it was a big gamble. But now Howard's re-signed his contract twice now, so I've.
Yeah, and you can go back and listen to old shows too. It's not just the new show you got to tune into, right?
Yeah, and they're doing they're filming the shows again too. So if you get Sirius, you can watch clips of the shows online too on the app.
So you could do Howard 24/7 if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, you really could. He puts a lot of specials and stuff up there, and there's a ton of stuff to listen to.
Right.
If you're a Howard fan.
So now, I mean, it pretty much worked out for him because, I mean, he could go back to doing what he was doing on regular radio where they wouldn't let him do it anymore. And they said, man, you must be happy that you can use the F word, man, whenever you want. He's like, that's not why I'm going. I'm going because I want to do what I was doing 10 years ago, and they wouldn't let him do what he was doing 10 years ago.
To be honest, the show hasn't changed all that much since it left terrestrial radio. I think the biggest difference is that they do have the ability to swear now,
Well, I thought, because most of Howard's listeners are like regular blue-collar people, and not everybody's got the money to get, radio, and I thought it would flap for him, but it seems to be working where he had enough of a listener base that they did pay to listen to him, but I know Oprah Winfrey followed suit, and she left regular television, and she's doing her own thing, and you don't hear much about Oprah anymore, so why do you think it worked for Howard but not so much Oprah?
Good question. I think mostly, because a lot of his stuff still makes headlines, like when he does something controversial or if he has, a good interview. But I also think maybe the America's Got Talent appearance for 4 years might have given him a boost.
Helped him, yeah.
Put him back in the public eye again,
Yeah. Or, I mean, Oprah, she's still big enough she's not hurting, but, I mean, you can't say she's what she was when she was on regular TV. Everybody knows her,
You hardly hear anything about
her. Yeah, right, exactly. So, whatever he did, he made it work, where others who followed suit, they couldn't make it work as big, but, now, these are a couple Boston guys. Do you remember the Opie Anthony show?
Yeah, I do.
They kind of followed Howard's suit, and they took on the thing where they were going to make fun of Howard. That's how they were going to get popular, was to make fun of him. And Howard didn't like that, and he put a lawsuit. They put they call it a hush lawsuit, where they weren't allowed to talk about him anymore. And they said, Howard.
I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, they said Howard's supposed to be the guy where he's the guy fighting for anybody to say what they want. Yet he's putting a lawsuit against them to make them hush and not talk about him anymore. So I mean,
that's a little weird.
Well, I mean, they were using Howard by attacking Howard, using his popularity to gain popularity for themselves. Hey, we're the guy who's going to attack Howard. That's why you listen to us, Instead of doing it on your own merits, they wanted to.
So maybe that's what made them angry, not so much.
Yeah, they were trying to use attacking him as a platform to get popular, and that's why, hey, be quiet about that. But I guess it's all how you look at it. But
that's probably why he hasn't talked about it either.
Yeah, right. That's just giving him publicity he don't want to give him. Yeah, I mean, I saw. It was Opie and Anthony. I saw an interview with them. Was how I knew after the Hush thing finally ran out. They talked about it. That was their point of view. He's supposed to be the guy. They're like, well, if we talked to Howard, would he have a different story? Like, yeah, probably. He'd have a different story. So, I don't know.
Interesting.
All right, so we're getting toward the end of the podcast here. I mean, you being a Howard fan, you followed him. I mean, this is your guy. What would you want other people to know about him?
I would say, if you're tired of just podcasts or anything like that, I mean, he's still good. I think he's worth the money if you go to Sirius XM. I don't know what it costs a month now, maybe $10 or something, but it's worth it for all his content on there. You could catch up on his entire history if you want on the app,
Right, yeah. And he still gets a big guest, right?
And I think he's still doing great interviews. So, and I still think he's funny,
Right. But I mean, he still gets the big guests they used to have on regular radio. There's still big guests he's having on XM, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so he hasn't skipped a beat, right? It's all whether you can afford it or not. Is it worth it to you? Everybody spends their money on something. Is that what you choose to spend your entertainment money on? It is it worth it to you to go over there? I guess, right?
Yeah, and I'd say if you're a comedian, it's worth it just for the comedian interviews,
Yeah, right. Yeah, to educate yourself, know your history, or you're doomed to repeat it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we end off every Funny Like Clown podcast with trivia. I'm going to ask you 3 trivia questions about Howard Stern. We'll see how you do, and I'll say nobody ever does good on trivia, okay?
Okay.
So if you don't do good, don't feel bad.
About Howard. Let me see how good I am.
Yeah, well, everybody thinks you know your hero until you put on the spot, then everybody's like, I should have known him. But if you don't do bad, don't feel nobody does good. It's just informative. All right. What did Howard's father constantly call him as a child?
Moron.
A moron is correct. You're 1 for 1 right off the bat. All right. What year did he team up with Robin Quivers?
Oh, God. I'm going to say maybe 82? 1982?
Oh, close. 1981. You were just out. That's pretty good, though. To get that close, man. Remember, it was the 80s, but 81 it was. All right, so you're 1 for 2. Here's the tiebreaker, number 3. What part of New York did Howard Stern grow up in?
Long Island.
It was Roosevelt, actually.
Roosevelt, that's what
you should have known that one, right?
I know.
All right, Keith, thank you so much for being on Funny Like Clown podcast. I wish you luck in your comedy career. Have you been doing any comedy lately, or?
No, I haven't been out in a long time. The comic stuff's been...
well, give it a quick plug. Tell us about your comic book real quick before you go. What are you doing in the comic book here? We'll give it a quick plug.
Oh, okay, yeah. My comic book, I just got a small publisher. The comic I'm putting out is called Mighty Mascots. It's a superhero book. Kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon gone wrong, basically.
So where can people get it if they want to purchase one?
It's in a lot of the area stores around here. I'd say check your local comic store. A lot of comic stores even across the country are carrying it, which is nice. But around here, you can get it at That's Entertainment.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's in Central Mass. So go to a comic book store, ask them for it. I mean, even if they don't have it, I'm sure they could probably Google it and find out how to get a copy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's got some comedy in it. It's more of a wacky superhero book. So.
Well, I wish you luck with your comic book.
Comedy there,
I know you're working hard. All right, take care. Thanks again for being on, and we'll talk soon.
All right, Dennis. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, Keith Gleason on Howard Stern, king of all media, self-proclaimed. He's one of those, you either like him or you don't, man. Is he offensive? Yes. Do you need a break from reality? Yes. Today, nowadays, everybody's offended by something. I say in my comedy, I don't even try, man. If you're offended, you're offended. That's on you. If you're not, you're not. This is America. We got First Amendment rights. You can say what you want. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, that's your choice. But either way, be you. You know, I mean, not that I do filthy comedy because I don't, but I mean, I'm a little bit edgy, and some people like it, some people don't. I tried to clean it up because you work a lot more if you work clean, but you know what? It wasn't me, and you got to be you. You know, I mean, so I'm gonna do what I do. You're gonna do what you do, and that's what makes America great. God bless America. God bless you guys for tuning in. Funny Like Clown podcast. Until the next episode, keep laughing because laughter is the best medicine. Good night.